Oh my god. We are live. See? Yeah, we're good. We're live. Okay. So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hide this. I'm going to test to make sure you guys can hear me. Actually, I'm going to bring this to the other screen. My bad. I'm getting everything set up, so bear with me. But today we have some interesting talks about development. So I'm gonna wait as well while everybody gets in here. And I have two screens, so I'm gonna do that while this all works. So perfect, it's working. Okay, should I? Yeah, I'm gonna use my phone to make sure everything's working. Welcome to the live stream. I haven't done too many of these in the past. I think I've only done one or two on Blind Power, but it's a holiday, so happy holidays and happy New Year. I feel like we need to cover this way, that way. I don't feel like editing and stuff on a holiday, so I'm like, you know what? And I have a road trip coming up tomorrow, which you will see a vlog, very, very, very dense vlog of next week. So I wanted to get some educational video in for people who are starting to code and are visually impaired or even totally blind. Or even if you're a developer who's totally sighted but wants to develop for the visually impaired and totally blind, I will cover that as well. Blind Power. My computer is basically screaming at me because we're doing a lot of stuff, but it's worth it. If you guys see any buffering or any freezing, let me know. It's worth it. If you guys see any buffering or okay, yep, there we go. Freezing. Yeah, it's working. Okay, awesome. So what's going on, everybody? We got 5 watching already. Okay, cool. So let's get started. Enough further ado. So those who've watched my videos, my name is Christian de Oliveira. I am a iOS developer and somewhat Android as well. I do desktop class Java and other stuff. I'm a software developer. And I do these Blind Power videos because I like technology and I like to talk about assistive technology. And I feel like we can talk about things that as a developer we notice, from coming from the accessibility user to the accessibility creator. I recently released I released 2 apps recently. I released version 1.0 and 1.01 of the Bump on Braille sticker pack, which contains stickers for the blind who want to text their friends. Like, it's not for the blind exactly, but it can also be used by the blind. It's labeled and everything, but it's more for if you're a Braille teacher who wants to send if you're in a Braille class in college and you want to mess around with Braille, that's one way, kind of like an interactive way to text your friends in Braille. I will go and update this once a month. This is a very quick, easy, maintainable sticker pack that I want to keep up every month, adding new stickers and making it fun and entertaining. That way, if you are a Braille teacher, you have an excuse to practice your Braille skills. And if you have Braille skills, you can practice them. And if you're totally blind and you want to speak to somebody who's learning Braille and is sighted or partially sighted, you can go and you can basically send the little stickers and Braille and stuff. It's cool, right? It's a whole interactive iMessage thing, and that's out. The version 101 is already out with holiday stickers and stuff. And I also came out with the Bump on Braille Learn. That is out now. It's basically a grade 1, letters A through Z. It guides you through it, explains to you what a Brailler is, what a Braille display is, what the old Braillers look like, what the new Braillers look like. It explains to you the cells, 1 through 6, and it's got a cheat sheet. But in Braille, Bump on Braille Update 1.1, we will also add a game, which is why I'm talking about experience, because I've been coding during the holidays here, 14 to 16 hours a day, and then before the holidays, I've been coding like 6 hours a day, after school and stuff. So I figured, I've had enough experience, and with freelancing, I've worked on apps that have been GPS intensive, apps that have used Firebase, which is an interactive database. And I feel like I have the experience enough to kind of talk about accessibility and like the accessibility implementations that we can use and how to make accessible apps better for the blind and visually impaired, and those people who have maybe mobility issues as well. General accessibility. So why not? Enough of the overview. Let's get started. So there's certain things that I feel like I've used. So here's the thing. As an iOS developer, I feel like dark mode is the first thing. On Xcode, I'm going to open up a project that isn't so privacy intensive, something that I can show you, and essentially is kind of in the realm of I can show you this and it's going to be okay. So bear with me. What I want to do, first of all, let me see here. I need to go ahead and I want to figure out how I can switch screens. Camera view. So bear with me here. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add a screen recording screen just so that we can get this started. So, a lot of things as an iOS developer is there's so many cool features. Apple makes things so well made. So I want to talk about that, and I want to kind of guide you through like my experience as like an Xcode developer. Things where it works. select. There you go, where my face is. Okay, cool. So basically, I'm gonna move the simulator aside. My bad. Let me move this so that you guys can see my face in the simulator. Okay, so basically, some things that I've learned is working with APIs as a visually impaired person. Now we're talking about like as a developer who makes apps as a visually impaired developer. So we stopped talking about the customer making accessible stuff for the customer. Now let's talk about the developer experience as somebody who needs accessibility services. First of all, voiceover with Xcode is good. I can't demonstrate it because I don't have my normal setup right now, and I don't want to do it while I'm live streaming. But trackpad exposure is great, so you can use your trackpad to basically navigate from the left side to the right side of the Xcode window. You can use code gestures to go through everything. VoiceOver is compatible with the iOS simulator, so if you don't have an iOS device to test accessibility on, you can use it that way. You make sure you have a trackpad. Do not try with a mouse because it's going to be unrealistic. Now, with I worked on game logic recently for the bump up braille. So I'm gonna, you guys have seen all this already. This is boring. Let's get to the end. It's not boring, but once you've seen it for 5 times 16, what is that? 60 hours. That's a lot. Okay, so basically, when you've been working on one thing, you're like, yeah, I already know braille, right? Those of you who don't know braille, I highly recommend you go through this. But to me, I'm like, okay, I've gone through this. So basically, I added a new game section here. Wait, but I thought what? Did I not update it? Oh no, you guys want to get the updated version. I'm sorry. Hold on. Then okay. No. Okay. Well, I guess what we're gonna do is I'm gonna run it. I'm gonna open up Xcode. I'm gonna make sure that the simulator gets what it deserves. So, okay. Yeah. So basically, as a developer, I've learned so much about being able to interact with the app itself, the code. When you're visually impaired, you're totally blind using accessibility, comments are very important. I highly recommend you comment your code a lot. It's going to be very important. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that here so you guys can see the code. Source code is very important. I don't want to reveal source code quite yet. So, revealing source code is going to be interesting because at this moment, I'm like, no, as a developer, Actually, I'm not going to hide my face. There we go. That's better. So here we go. Now I can talk about a little bit like bump around like game development. So I kind of it's basically like I brushed the surface of game development. When you're doing game development, you have to deal with scores and stuff. It changes the way your logic works for as a computer software engineer. When you're using impaired, you structure everything as neat as possible, and then you realize, like, I learned something that's called a main instance, making bump brown. I learned that main instances really help. I want to see who's watching and stuff here on the live stream. Okay, cool. Main instances are actually very interesting because they're a main class. You declare a class as main. So basically, if I pull up, I may be able to pull up a main instance here without. Let me see if I can pull up the file. And then we'll go over the new portions. You guys will get this update, I think, January 17th. Around there. I have everything scheduled. So okay. Don't mind the background. I'm using my eyesight camera on my Mac because it's the easiest thing. My DSLRs were dead. Okay, so I'm gonna do tomorrow. We're going on a road trip, so you'll see a vlog very soon as well. I'm gonna find what I'm looking for here. So bear with me. Where's my main instance? So see, apps have a lot of folders. See how many Swift files I have. UIKit, main instance. This is what a main instance looks like. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. I guess I can't. Okay, so this is what a main instance looks like. It's basically a class declared as main, and your variables are inside of there, and you pass a function of init into the variables that you want, and then you have a function call as main instance, and you declare your function into main, and you set the score to whatever you want, or you set the variable to whatever. It's very nice, very fluid, and that's how I manage the score. That is going to be open sourced, thanks to I just showed you the main instance. It's a stupid snippet of code that anybody can produce in their own way, so it's nothing really specific, unlike my game logic and stuff, which I desire not to show for purposes of making bump learn source closed source. Okay, now that we've done that, and I showed you that little piece of code for the game, that changed my logic on programming completely. Like on Java, I know that you can do it, and you can do like global variables, but this in Swift, which is the language that iPhone uses, iPhones, iPads, iOS devices use Swift and Objective-C. And as you know, starting on Objective-C when I was like, let me see. 14? No, I started seeing 14. Like 2010 when I learned Objective-C and the whole app thing started. Oh, excuse me. Okay, I've been in this world of coding all day, so it's like, man, it's cool to do this live stream because it gives me an ability to talk of what I've been doing. So basically, this whole main instance thing changed the way I code now in Swift because it taught me how to keep track of things publicly, completely globally. And this is great, because now my logic is completely new and I have a new approach to the next features of Bump Learn, and the sticker pack is very basic. So the sticker pack is a sticker pack doesn't require code. So, the sticker pack I basically maintain a little bit here and there. So that's why you're not seeing me touch on that. Now, I want to show you the game logic, and I want to talk about, it took me approximately 36 hours to come up with the game logic and the whole quiz thing. And I actually did something interesting. When you're visually impaired, you miss some detail on the screen, and when you're totally blind, you miss detail as well on the screen, and you may not know, you may do your constraints and stuff, but you may want to have somebody to overlook your views and talk about I like this, I don't like this, I hate this, and then have somebody who's going to be honest with you. I actually took this app several times to my mom and my stepfather, and they're not so tech savvy, I guess. They're, they go to Facebook and stuff, but they're not on Instagram or anything. They don't follow trends. They're your typical non-tech savvy person who just does what they like. They don't follow trends. They just go on, just standard average consumer. So I basically said, okay, can you play with this? Like, test. And indirectly, I didn't say, I want you to test my game because it's going to sound boring, right? If they don't like technology, they're going to be like, No, I made it fun. I said, hey, I want you to see this. I want you to see how this is going. Look at this. I'm so happy. And, you want people who care for you. You don't want to do people who are like, yeah, okay. You want people who they, to please you, they'll touch the app. And they may not like technology, but to please you, they'll be like, oh, that's cool, and they'll start playing with it, because it's, they'll be supportive. And that's kind of the approach I took, and I learned some stuff. Like, there was errors, like when multiple actions were done, like multiple buttons were pressed at once, and the app crashed. I said, wow, my mom, for example, the app hanged, because there was a bug, and I'm like, cool, there's a memory leak. I realized this because she was going like this, tap, 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 like, what's going on? I'm like, this is awesome. I'm learning, like, every person that grabs a phone will do something different. Nobody has the same app behavior that, that like a developer has. Like, we know how apps work, and we just, we're like very smooth with the app. We treat technology the way we know it works because we're programmers. And, as a visually impaired person, I miss a lot of the UI details. And that's one thing I miss, like the button, the whole, thing about like the layout. And like, they're like, the Braille cells don't have separators. It was all white background. Like you guys saw at that moment when I opened up the earlier release, because I used Git for version control. Git is part of GitHub, and it's a version control. You pay private version control, so you don't have to make everything public. What time is it, man? Yeah, we're good. We're good in time. So basically, what I did was I said, okay, fine. I kept showing them this app, and I added the separators. Thanks to them, I knew that the cells were not together. Like as somebody who knew Braille, I knew that there was 6 cells, and I knew where the separations were because I'm the programmer. I know where the buttons begin and end. But as the average user, they're not going to know that. So then they told me, oh, but wait, how many cells are in a Braille cell? I can't tell which one's my answer. They thought that the little dots were the ones, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's so true. How do you know a lot of the visual detail as a visually impaired or totally blind developer if you can't see well? Like, how do you perfect your views and your UI views, UI tables? You go and you give it to somebody sighted, somebody who's gonna say, I like this, I don't like this. Don't give it to somebody who's going to say, oh, this is great, I love everything about it, and that's it, end of story. Give it to somebody who's going to, tell you what they like and what they don't like and what they think you should change, because they're the average user. So basically, you're getting user input on apps. Of course, don't just go around the street asking for random user input, because you may run into a developer and somebody who wants to take your idea. Or somebody who's going to grab your idea and sell it. Do it to people who are internally, your family, your friends, people who you may know. And this is, I tested basically all the UI, and I said, oh, what do you think? And let's play a little bit of this Bump Braille game. So basically, this looks familiar to you if you've downloaded my app. Same here. Animations, I made the animations a little bit faster. I basically just said, okay, fine, make these animations a little bit faster. It's going to look nicer. Very, very fast animations. I can now click faster because there was a little bit of hang when you were going through the apps, like through the letters very fast. It wasn't as fast as fluid in the 1.0 release. Oh, there we go. We're here. So this is the new quiz thing, a grade 1 quiz. So which letter is the letter P? Now, if you enter, so here's the thing. The green background was white, and the text background here in the back was white as well, so you can only see the text. And everything's the same, but green was replaced with white. Now, see, the cells in the back is white. So how do you know where the cells end and begin? So then I put the background as like a lime green so that you can tell where everything is, and it's nice. Now, if I say a wrong answer, it's going to deduct, 2 points. So, and it has like a little buzzard sound. Oh, my bad. So let's redo that again because that wasn't well done. Let me put the volume up a lot as well, so you guys can hear it. Okay, so what I'm gonna do this again. I had a test debug button, but I took it off because I was done with that section. But since I'm showing you guys, I have to go through the whole thing here. I mean, it's such a great UI. I'm happy with this. If you guys want to do constructive criticism, I am definitely willing to, look out for that. Like, there's a review, somebody saying that the sticker pack was missing some stuff, and I'm gonna add the numbers and stuff. So here it is. Incorrect answer. So this is not the letter P. This is another letter. And then you get a buzzer, and then it takes off 2 points. Get the letter correct, and get the little check mark animation, and it does the ding, 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 ding. Now the letter K, same thing. So, if I get it wrong, and then every time you get it wrong, you get 2 points deducted. When you get it right, you get 10 points. So it'll be a total of 100. Minus your score. So minus, whatever you get wrong, plus, so plus or minus score. So, okay. Correct. So, it's like really, really cool. So if we go through this. See? Really cool. I mean, once you know Braille, this becomes fairly easy. But I am going to work on grade 2 as well. Grade 2 is on the way. And look at that awesome animation. And then our score is a 96. Because we got 2 wrong. We made 2 mistakes. And that's a really cool animation. I feel like that end animation is awesome. So I actually got that animation from a solitaire game. I didn't exactly copy it like word for word, but I like the animation. And I found like a confetti thing that we can copy because I said, I like that, da-da, and then the confetti. There's a solitaire game out there that has that, but like not as animated, and it's like a little bit of confetti and that's it, and it's kind of a mixture between fireworks and confetti. But, with this, I'm like, I like what I see. I like this animation. Why not use it? And the ta-da, boom, see? And it's actually very quick and easy, and you get 100%. And boom, it just does that little ta-da animation, and then it goes away. So it's very, very nice. In my opinion, I think it looks very fluid. You could try it again, or you can go back home. And now look at those animations. So those of you who saw the previous update, if you grab your phone right now, what is this? That's new. What? That's odd. I need to figure out what that little button is. Okay. So basically, like if you compare with the app that you have on your phone right now, the current up version, if you've downloaded it, the animation here is a lot snappier. Watch. It slides down. Bring it up. Slides up. So a little more animated. Bring it up. Slides up. Take it down. Slides down. And I did this on purpose using the animation thing. I forget the name now. Man, I'm very bad with remembering the names. But that animation is, I know Lottie because I've used Lottie so many times. But this one, I've recently learned it, and it works great. It's called Hero. That's what it is. So, the two animations that I'm using, Lottie and Hero, I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna show you guys like the implementation and like my experience working with the third-party APIs. It's actually been really good. Now, you know, if we go and we say the cool thing is, see, like I get my animations. So if you're a developer and you don't know where to get your animations, so here it is. This is where I get all my Lottie animations. Ooh, that's a new one. That's a nice one. And there's always new ones every day. Like these are all new. These top ones. That's a cool little like a beacon app thing. Like cool animation for that. Oh man, where the? So see, this is a cool little beacon one, and it's this code called JSON, and then it parses it for you. But you can see there's a way to edit it. Where is it? And don't be intimidated. You don't have to touch this code. But this, I mean, this is the Lottie code. It's cool. Oh wait, what? It's not showing me the code. I think you can create animation. I want to show you the code, but I guess it's not showing me the code. Okay, fine. But you know, that's the Lottie animation, and then the Lottie code is actually very complex. JSON for these animations would take days, but it basically parses it for you. So I'm gonna go into my resource file for Braille. Where are you? So here's our JSON files. So the game show winner. Oh, that's the audio file. Never mind. Where are you? Where are you? JSON files. We need to find the JSON files. Okay, here. I'm trying to look for our JSON files. Okay. Oh, here's our JSON folder. So here's our JSON stuff. And now, if I go and I say, I'm gonna say the check mark success, for example, the one you see when you press the next button or whatever. Let's go into open with, and I'm gonna open with. I'm actually gonna open it up with the Visual Studio. Why not? That's a great little IDE that we can use. So I'm gonna open this up, and then you guys can see a little bit of what this is about. Like JSON is a very good language to use. I use Visual Studio for my backend development. So it's basically formatted as one big old line, and it's very complex. Like, look at this. Look how long this is. Now, this is just how they format it, but I'm pretty sure they have to format it in another way. Visual Studio is a must-have IDE if you're a developer. It's very visually impaired friendly. Now, I guess we can open it up with Xcode so you can. I didn't want to intimidate immediately. Like I wanted to show you the neat way of looking at it. But if we open with Xcode, then you can see. This is the code, how it looks, okay? This is the none one-line formatting, none of that. Like, this is true Xcode formatting. There's no, no, this is pure format. This is like how it works. You don't have to touch this. You can change the values and stuff to, like, make the little specs different. Each spec is the, where you see 0.0 or whatever, when you see the little strings. They're basically little specs. It's cool. I wouldn't mess with it. Whatever. Now about the Lottie animation and the Hero animations. I want to talk about those and like my experience developing with third-party APIs. So I've used Lottie, Hero, and I've used CocoaPods, of course, to integrate them. And I like the command line as a really impaired person, and even for the totally blind, you guys would love the command line as well, because if you want to, for example, the pod files, which is where you edit everything. So say I go into my folder here, I have it recognized, memorized already, and with VoiceOver you could just listen through your recent commands, and the command line is very simple to use. So these are all here's all the pod commands that you can use. So this is how I install all of my APIs and stuff. There you go. And you can use you can do a cache, you can do a clean, you can do all these things. You can initialize, you can install the pods, so you can install them from the pod file. You can list the pods. So you can see what I have installed, because I can go pod list. See, and then you see oh, I guess it doesn't work. Interesting. So trying to list, but it's not listing. Interesting. So, but there's different commands you can do. I don't want to mess with it too much because I don't want to ruin my project. Pod list. Oh, no, pod. Yep, CocoaPods library. Unknown. Oh, so I can't find it. Whatever. But basically, that's how I do that. And then, if we find, for example, Hero was one of the most complicated ones, animations, but it makes it look good. So Hero animation, iOS API. And then here's where I got my implementation. So I basically installed it through the command line with CocoaPods, and I added this to my pod file, this thing, the pod Hero. And here's all the possibilities you have with the animations. I'm using the middle one right here, the one that says cover. That's the one I'm using, and it works really, really nicely. There's also slide, but I like the cover one better because you can animate it differently and stuff. It's really cool. It's like, I feel like you can use them both in hand in hand. The code implementation is actually very cool. It's this right here. I actually added an extension from the source code. If you're new to development, there's a sample project in here somewhere. Samples, and then here you can see everything. Here's here's like all the sample files of like the usage and stuff. And here, like, they have an example like similar to the one in the App Store, and you can see, the implementations. These are more complicated ones. These are more interactive. They're not as complicated, but they are. The implementation that I used is quite more simple because I used an extension that I made. And there's another extension that I used as well. I had an extension to automate a lot of it, but okay, here it is. So this was in my file as well. This made things a little bit easier for formatting and stuff. I use this quite a bit to do a lot of my animations, alongside a custom UI view extension that I created to make things easier, which implemented some other stuff. So very, simple, like, when you're visually impaired or totally blind, keep things as organized as possible. Try to make your own libraries to create shortcuts. And that's that, one problem that I found is when you're visually impaired, you lose a lot of detail. Like, one thing my family was saying was like, I noticed, let me go back to the quiz, and I want to talk about this. So, for example, not just the whole, separate the cells. Another thing that my family was saying was, my mom pointed to my stepfather. Oh, here here is the text, and here, look at and then she pointed like if it was really small, the text, and I realized the text is too small. Like for me, I'm so used to putting my phone up to my face, I don't know. But then I don't know like what the average 20/20 sighted person sees or the average 20/30. I don't know. So then by them, using the app, I realized like those 5 minutes that they were playing with it, I'm like, oh, I need to make the text bigger and bolder. And then I realized, okay, I need to separate the cells. And I just realized I need to change the home icon thing too. But like, it's really cool how, you learn by having somebody else use your app, and you realize, the animations, for example, made it super simple for people to understand, like how the animations work, like how you're supposed to use the app. So, the separations were very important. The heavier text, very important. Now, there's a lot of screen space on the top, and that's because I want it to be very like one-handed usage. I want it to be simple and accessible. So I don't want people to have to reach their hand over to one screen to the other. I want things to be as simple as possible. And I feel like this is the UI choice I choose for the app. I feel like having a lot of space and making things very spacious, taking advantage of the screen real estate is very important. Now, if I were to change the screen size, there's other ways. There's other views, other things you have to take into consideration. I did not add landscape or portrait support on here. Like I could try that, and you see there's nothing happens, because I feel like for iPhone, this is currently available. I'm gonna modify for iPad very soon, but not yet. I feel like I would first make an Apple TV version, but that's maybe in the future. Now, as an Android, prior to this, I did Android development, and whoa, that's crazy. So one thing, I'm trying to figure something out. Hold on, I just figured something out. So my animations actually kicked into the notification center as well. Okay, enough of this. I'm like debugging, and I'm like, oh, how do you? Yeah, see. Okay, whatever. One thing that I learned is that iOS, if you're doing Android and you feel like you want to learn something new, iOS is great because it takes what you already know from Android. Kotlin, for example, they're so similar. Swift and Kotlin, I can't ever pronounce it. I would say Kotlin, are very similar. There are languages that you can compare. You can say, oh, I like, that with Kotlin, you have Java and interpolation. But with Swift, you have Objective-C and C interpolation. So, you basically, if you're already an Android and you know C, then you could do Swift because of the fact that it's heavily based on, it uses Objective-C methods, so C, and it also takes everything you love about every computer programming languages and kind of sandwiches it together. Android has IntelliJ with Java and Kotlin, but accessibility on Android is like you have to do it by hand. And there's actually a library for accessibility on Android. iOS accessibility is baked in, so you basically can use the IntelliJ or the autocorrect to basically do accessibility. With Android, accessibility is not part of the main thing, like the Android import, so you actually have to look in the documentation and see how to call these accessibility methods and how to use them, because there's no IntelliJ or autocorrect for accessibility methods. So I like iOS because that can make more accessible apps. I feel like more of the totally blind community and part of the visually impaired community are all on Android and iOS. I feel like iOS is the main platform for accessibility most of the time. I'd say 90% iOS, or maybe 85% iOS, and then 15% Android for the most part, for the blind or visually impaired anyway. For other stuff, for Android, there's probably a little more for like the physically handicapped, because of the fact that you have switches. You You have switches. Apple has something similar, but I feel like the Google one may be a little bit better implemented. It's definitely better to stay up to date on accessibility on iOS, because you could just start typing and it shows up. With Android, you have to keep looking at the documentation. So I'm going to compare here the iOS and Android documentation so you can see why I prefer iOS documentation as a visually impaired programmer. So Apple dev, come on, man. Apple, you're so stupid, egotistic, showing an Apple logo when I type Apple. I don't care for your stupid Apple logo. Okay, there we go. So Apple dev documentation. Okay. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to open up here, this. And then I'm going to open up a new tab. So there it is. And then I'm going to say Android documentation. I'm going to say Kotlin because it's the most similar thing. Okay, Android. Excuse me again. I am so tired. Yawning is something, it's kind of involuntary at some point. So see, like with Android, the documentation. So I guess we could say Chrome OS. We could say Android Auto. No. Android. Okay, so we'll just say Android devices. So here's your documentation. You have a nice glossary here on the left hand side. You know, you can do audio and video. You can audio and video, support media format. Okay, so mobile app architecture. So touch and input. Okay, so see, it gets super messy. Media player. And then in here you can see a media player code and how to call it. And yeah, it's interesting, right? Media player, you can do the media player in XML. And then you can see in Java, how do you call the media player? So then you have the commented, so no need to call prepare. So and you know, it's like r.sound.file, and here you see file name. And the thing is, they set it to nil. Like, why do you want to do this? This is stupid. Like, why don't you just put example.mp3 or whatever? You know, like there's little things like that. And it's very full. Now, with iOS, look at this documentation. I go Swift, and then here, like, why is it taking me to Objective-C? But then this sucks, right? Like the documentation sucks. But now, if you want to open up like Xcode, and you wanna, I'm gonna bring up the example project again that we were working on, and I want to open up. I want to go and I want to see what something is. I don't go to the documentation like an Android. I clicked. I clicked the command key. I can find my mouse again. Okay, so I hold down the command key, and you see how everything's like selecting like this. Anything I want to know about, right? Anything. I want to be like, okay, so what is, so I'm gonna be like, okay, so what is this right here? What is this accessibility hint? I click on it, and it's gonna explain to me what the accessibility hint. And I can click here if I want to know more and go into documentation. And this documentation is much more better than the Android one. And the Android one is much better than the online documentation. Very weird, isn't it? So online Apple documentation is terrible. In IDE documentation is great. Android documentation on the web is awesome. In IDE documentation is non-existent. So and then you go here and you set animation view, like your animation view, animation loader, for example, like. See, and then you do this. Since this is a custom function, and it says, declared in, but then if it doesn't know it, it's gonna tell you it doesn't know it. But then it gives you the option to copy this and paste it somewhere else and online or whatever. If you want to know what this is, like the song variable, you can see the song is AV Foundation Player, and you know where it comes from, and you can basically click on the view controller button and it'll take you to where it was declared. Same thing, animation view, like, okay, this is part of my Lottie animation. What if I click here? See, it says it's part of the UI view and it's a Lottie things. That's a declaration. But now I click here. See, these are all third-party APIs. So third-party APIs, it gives you some intel. But if it's part of like Apple, for example, like this background color, it's going to talk about background color. And then it gives you this declaration on how it was declared. See, background color, and then you can use this to create like extensions or whatever. Very, very complete. Now, Android Studio and Xcode are both good. I'm not gonna hate there. Now, if you have imports and you want to know where they're coming from, you can search documentation, and it's not gonna find it because it's not part of the API. But like something that is part, we're loading my computer way too much. So I'm gonna close this off and I'm gonna go back to Xcode. And I'm gonna go back to Xcode and I'm gonna say, okay, fine, I hate how it tries to control me and like load it on the other screen. I'm like, I want it here. There's certain things, for example, like Android Studio versus Xcode, like they're both good, but then you have so much fine control on Swift that it's just awesome. And like I feel like IDE errors, like errors. One reason why I switched from iOS to Android, from Android to iOS for development is because as well is errors. For example, if I do something stupid, like inside of here where it's supposed to be self, and I take off the self, it's going to tell me self isn't there. Watch, I'm going to build the program, and it tells me implicit self to closure. Use self to make capture semantics explicit. And I add the self and it's gone. Android Studio tells you this is your problem, and it's on the bottom right on the log. Like, it shows up on the log. Like on Xcode, you don't see a log. It's right there, part of your code, and you just fix it. And it tells you, oh, the error on Android Studio, it's like the error is on line 26, and you have to go up to find line 26. Like, for example, line 26 here, to go find it as a visually impaired person, I have to go and say, okay, here's line 26. Now what? Android, you have to do that. You have to look on the bottom right, squint your eyes, or make it big and find out. With iOS, it just shows you a line. Or if I add a typo right here, it's not on line, 25. It's not going to tell me you have an error on line 25. It's going to say expected comma because that's what it thinks it does, right? It's going to try to give me a suggestion, which is wrong. I made a mistake myself. I put in a finger where it's not supposed to, but at least it tried to help me. Android Studio and back in the old IntelliJ days, it just there was no support for like error handling like Swift and Xcode. Xcode does wonderful error handling, even in Objective-C back when in the old days. So I've always thought that like iOS has a heads up on Android. Is a step ahead when it comes to error handling. So it's just like. I always say don't get intimidated if you're, blind or visually impaired, or if you have any kind of disability and you want to learn to program. Anybody can program. I actually learned on a website that's very, very close to me, and I've talked to these people, and I'm like, man, you changed my life. Code.org. This was back in the old days. Like, they've changed a lot now, but. There's different little like examples. I think my first one. Did it have it? No, but it was similar to. I think it's. So that there's different little things you can do in code.org or whatever. And then I don't want to get copyright. And then you see how it works. And then here's all the code blocks, right? And I mean, this is a very complicated thing. And then you're going to say 21 plus. Okay. So then you see, here's all the code. And this is like, you can see like, okay, fine. Select the song. And then you can see like, this is all the code and it's doing it in blocks. And this is how I learned to code. So if you're visually impaired or totally blind, you can use, you can basically use like a block format. Like I believe this is accessible, somewhat. It's not that accessible, but it's at least navigatable with VoiceOver, not JAWS or WindowEyes or any other. But if there's different ways. But for visually impaired and partially sighted, this is awesome because like watch, you have you have a setup function which sets everything up, and it's kind of like an initializer. This is basically very 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 spread out. But there's actually ones that have an if and else, and but this is like levels for like pre-programming knowledge level, and they talk about like how do you do these things. And like if you want to, I learned to code on here, and this webpage is very dear to me because like, how do you learn like the logic? Where the heck is my mouse? And you can, if you want, you can play and you can say, okay, so clap high, and then like if for clapping, for example, I could say clap high. Let me see. I should be able to modify this. Okay. So hold on. I want to. Oh, you can't modify this. Okay, so whatever. So then once you get the knowledge of how this works and you play with this code and you realize, oh, I like it. I'm not signed in, so I can't do anything. But now, if you're like, oh, I want to learn how does it work, and blocked over the code is a associated. Okay, so. What language is this in? Oh, it's a general syntax. So basically, it says cat, what Dynacard 2. So these are all the variables, and you have if range equals low, and then you can basically figure out all this stuff, and then you can see how the code works. I believe this is Python, and you can see these are the methods, right? It takes in a variable of 20, but this is a very complex one. But there's very simple ones that are very easy as well for new programmers. And for accessibility-wise, this is great because it's very simple to learn. And once you get the syntax of it, it's awesome. There's so many projects. There's a very simple one. I think this is one. See, this is just 4 colors. Boom. Now, you could built-in code studio. How it works, view code. And then here, you can see how it works. See, it's just telling you this stuff. So, I mean, it's interact. You can interact it, but it's, I don't know how interactable it's going to be. See, it's flashing. It's basically that. And then let's see what else we can do. Stupid mouse. I get frustrated with dual monitors. This is why I have an ultra wide. And by the way, you need a pretty powerful computer to run this. At least decent computer. So it's nice, right? And then you can go through this code, and you can see a little more realistic code. So this is var, and then this is better for programming knowledge, and it's going to call a variable, so file, flash sequence, and then here you can change it. I'm not signed in, so I can't change anything, but then you see you have a function called flash sequence, and flash sequence is being called here, but then you can see what's inside of flash sequence, and it's very graphic-y and very friendly for visually. And then if you're like, oh, I want to see how it works, you can use a screen reader. If you're totally blind or whatever, and you can figure out how this code works. I would recommend finding something that's describable, that is accessible. Like there's accessible code snippets as well, and you can see how it works. But here, for example, you have a on event, a green button, so this calls for the button, and that's how I learned to code. And I recommend those who want to learn to code do this, or if you have kids at a young age who want to learn to code, show them this, because this is great, this is awesome, and that's how to get started on development. Now, the book that I read, the first what got me started into code development, is, believe it or not, if you're visually impaired or totally blind, and you want descriptive tutorials, I recommend Sean Allen. The dude has a podcast as well. I think YouTube, and in YouTube you can go and find YouTube.com. Why are you bringing up YouTube down there? And you can find, there's our live stream. Cool. And I need to see how many people are watching and stuff. Okay. Much appreciated. Yep, this is me. So what's going on? Yeah, this is me. So this is Black Power. This is the channel. This is a live stream. So basically, I just got to the message. I'm sorry. I realized you said it at 12:16 and it's 12:49. I'm very bad with the chat thing. I need to put a little snippet on the side of the screen or something that slides it, because I always see them too late or whatever. Okay, it's just I'm still kind of new to live streaming. So the dude that I recommend if you want to see tutorials for Swift, this is Sean Allen. He does weekly Swift videos and stuff. Honestly, Here's where I learn a lot, where I keep up with
What's going on, everybody?
No, don't play it. Stupid. Alright, whatever. I hate the whole autoplay thing. So basically, you get Swift news and you learn all about stuff. That's how I keep up with my news. And I also keep up a lot on Twitter. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, I do, stay there for accessibility stuff, and I stay up to date on accessibility on a lot of Swift and Java stuff. Java is not really good Java YouTube. I just watch whatever, But you can go and I'm gonna go into Twitter, and then I'll show you. Like, I'm always on Twitter, so you can go, I think twitter.com/blindpower. I follow a lot of tech sites, but there's also really good Swift. So here it is, iOS compressed, very short Swift tutorials for iOS beginning, and I get these Swift news things where I see. I am a big custom PC build fan, so that's what you see there. And then there's different things that I follow for when you're working professionally in app development, you want to follow a lot of people. This is a great one, Swift Dev Feed. They talk a lot about Swift stuff, but accessibility wise, they talk about stuff here and there. Now there's something that I do want to talk about. There's accessibility changes in Swift 5, so I want to talk about that now as the ender for this video. So where is it? Where are you, Swift 5? Let's go into swift.org because okay, here it is. So I need to find accessibility because I know that there's some new stuff going on here. This is so annoying. I guess we'll go to our blog, Swift blog, because honestly, I want to show you guys the accessibility stuff that's coming up in Swift 5. Swift 5 is already on the way. Here it is. Okay, here we go. Sorry that I'm yawning so much. It's so I want to show continuous integration testing. Okay, getting changes in Swift 5. Doing Swift 5. They did talk about some accessibility stuff that I want to talk about. Let's see what we can find here. The final branching. Nope. Okay. Well, there was something about more accessibility improvements in Swift 5, but I can't find it now. But there's definitely going to be some improvements when it comes to how it's going to run, testing, sub-pull request. Okay. But there's definitely some really cool stuff. So source compatibility, snapshots, and this Swift.org has all the stuff you want to learn if you want iOS development. Java has an Oracle is owned by Oracle, but Swift.org for more details. Okay. Well, I mean, toggle master. I wanted to show you guys accessibility improvements, but I guess Apple is working alongside with the Swift developers to focus on accessibility improvements and stuff like that. Honestly, it's awesome to see that Swift is improving. I see Swift as the best language. And Kotlin, but mostly Swift, for if you're totally blind or visually impaired as a developer, because it's a neat language. Like you see here, all my code is organized in a folder fashion. For professionals, I want to show you the screenshot for how the Bump Braille folder structure is, so you can get an idea how this structure for a complex program looks. This is my folder structure for Bump Braille, and as you see here, I have my sounds files, and I have 3 sounds files. I have 3 JSON animations, and you see it. It's a large program, but it covers like half of my screen on my sidebar. You see, we have for Swift files as a complex Swift program. We have 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 8 Swift files, and they're all divided into a point where it's really readable, and it's very the screen readers can describe it well because of the fact that it's all organized. Like go here, for example, if you're gonna call you'll say I don't know, what example can I give you? For example, here, it'll say image.accessibility hints equals, and then it will ignore the quotes, and it'll just say what's inside of the quotes. Like there's accessibility improvements for for programmers who are using VoiceOver. There's different VoiceOver is actually very well behaved with Xcode and with the iOS simulator. So coding with Swift and Xcode and VoiceOver enabled is actually very good. With Zoom as well, for the people who have sighted, problems, or partially sighted, visually impaired, it's great as well because Swift looks very neat. The folders can be well organized, and of course, Xcode, the IDE, has dark mode. So that makes it very, very, very handy. Now, Android Studio, comparing to, is a lot more messy. Java is a lot more of a messy program. I'm actually going to stop this stuff here. And by the way, Bump Braille Learn may be coming to Android. I don't know yet. Android. I hope it doesn't bring up anything personal. I want to show you guys how Java is laid out, because Java is it's not neat at all. So color value. I guess, not existent. No. So I don't have my flash drive plugged into here right now. And I haven't updated Android Studio because I haven't touched it in a while. But Java programs are very messy. They're not as structured. You could make them nice, but you have to put in the effort. You have to make sure your code is neat. Versus Xcode and Swift, it naturally flows. There's a command that just makes everything in line. There's another command that boom, just cleans the build folder. Versus Java, if you have a lot of libraries, you have to deal with Java dependencies. You have to deal, or with Kotlin, you have to deal with Kotlin dependencies that are based on Java, and then you have to figure out a way to work with Gradle. Versus iOS, you just code, you build, you run. You have the Model View controller, which is one layout that Apple uses. There's different ways, different things that just work in Xcode. Versus Android Studio, you have to worry about the Android lifecycle, which is a stack of things that you have to worry about, like the Java. The JVM, Java Virtual Machine. Then you have to go worry about Gradle, and then it goes to the Android device, and there's such a big list. Versus iOS, there's nothing like that. Like here, let's do this. Android Life Cycle. I want to show you this. My professor showed me this, and I was like, oh, I don't want to look at this. Which one is the one that I think it's easy? Oh, come on. I want something graphically pleasing. They're all looking so complicated. Whatever. We'll look at this, right? This one looks good. So you have, this is, no. Like there's I know it's somewhere. No, I can't find it now. I know it's the Android build. I'm trying to find it because I know it's there. Here it is. So it goes Java, and then the Java class, and then, it goes through the APK, and then Android manifest and resources. So, this is the Android build cycle. This is what I'm talking about. It's like, why do you need this? What's the point? And that's a basic one. There's some that go a lot deeper. I want to see if I find one. There's one that I was shown by my professor in Android dev class, but no, it's not there. Okay. Well, I guess now we can look at the iOS Swift build life cycle, and I bet you we're not gonna find much. There's none, because Apple doesn't even post it. Like, people have tried to make them, I think. No, there isn't. I mean, basically, it just works. You don't have to worry about this thing called the friggin' manifests and this other thing called... what's it called again? I forgot. I'm just kidding. No, you have to worry about the JVM. There's another thing that I can't remember that I don't even worry about, but it's called Gradle. I keep forgetting. What is Gradle? Oh yeah, that's what runs everything. It's based on another language, which I don't remember. Basically, I have holes in my knowledge because I refuse to learn this mumbo jumbo of stuff that Android makes you remember. That why? The IDE should handle a lot of that stuff for you and should make life easier for you. Not easy, but easier, so that because it makes it too easy. Like some other IDEs, like NetBeans, for example, it doesn't give you enough information, and then, you may not get the skills you need. But, with Android, it just gives you too much control, and it doesn't give you that point where you don't want control on something. Can't you just let go of that control and just say, I want to code and I want to worry about the XML and the Java only? No. Like, you have to worry about the manifests, you have to worry about the Gradle, and these are all components of Android apps. Versus iOS, you have to worry about the plist and the Swift, and inside of the Swift, you have to worry about the delegate. That's it. And then the project settings and stuff, but that's on Android Studio as well. So for accessibility wise and, simplicity, I say iOS. If you want to work on accessibility and you want more, like with Android, you have more possibility to create more, but you have to create certain things from the ground up. And that may take weeks, months, or sometimes even years. Versus iOS, you find something and you can kind of, put them together like if there were individual pieces of silly putty and just, squish them together and they'll work. They'll be a nice tight ball of code. Versus, Android, you have to grab each individual piece of silly putty, put glue them together, wait for it to dry, and then it's a nice semi-firm ball of code. So, I prefer iOS because of that, and I feel like it's easier. But for Android Studio has dark mode as well, and it's the same thing. Like, it's all about preference. But accessibility wise, I say iOS, Swift Xcode is neater because of the fact that you have that UI. Now, I also do desktop apps, and I say that Java for certain things is amazing. I love Java for when it comes to networking and when it comes to .NET frameworks and stuff. It's much fluent. It's much easier to parse data from a database and to do things like that. And to me, that's very messy. Like, I don't like working with MySQL or some. I like to work with Firebase because it's a simple database and it's interactive and it's like on point. Like, you want something to go right now. It's real-time database and it's very clean and simple. But sometimes you have to deal with a code that's not clean, not simple, and most of the time you reach that point in Java. And as a visually impaired person, I don't find myself getting lost in code. Lost of that I love code, yes, but like lost that I don't know what the heck I'm doing, very rarely, because I try to keep organization. And some of these dependencies, some of these libraries that you may implement in Java or Android or even Kotlin may have problems that it's hard to compile because a problem in your code could be coming from 10 different files, but you have to read a long paragraph of errors to figure out what your error is. So as a visually impaired person, Swift, it just tells you exactly where things are, and it's easier to keep code maintainability. So I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. I did. We've been live streaming over an hour now, and I kind of wanted to do this to give you my insight on what I do. I've been coding as a freelance developer and as my own apps for Bump on Braille Learn, and then I have some more apps on the way. Hint, one of them is something that is in hardware right now, and it's going to be basically my goal is to make the phone an accessory or make the phone a piece of equipment that can be used in accessibility scenarios. And one of those scenarios requires a very expensive product that I want to stop making that very expensive product a viable solution. I want to make it where you can get a $10 app instead of having to pay $2,000 for that one specific product. I'm giving you a hint, and it has to be and it's in the visually impaired environment. It's something you use, to enlarge something, and it's some digital, some not. So basically, I gave you as close of a hint as you can. If you figured it out, good for you. So I will probably have that out in May or June, maybe earlier. I give myself a big deadline very far away so that I can approach. So when I see that the deadline's approaching, I get it out there faster. Like I said, that Bump on Braille, to myself, I said it'll be out January. And look, it's January. It's almost January. We've already released a 101 release and 1.0 on the actual Learn part of the Bump on Braille project. So it's great. Now I'll see you guys in the next live stream. I've definitely given my insight on development. If you have any questions, go to twitter.com/blindpower. I'm there a lot. I post a lot of iOS stuff and accessibility stuff, so stay tuned there. More videos coming of a travel vlog very soon, and my voice is starting to grow hoarse from speaking. So I'll see you in the next live stream.